Some of the most impressive things about Japan aren't things at all, they're absences. No litter on the streets despite almost no public bins, no coin deposit required to use a shopping cart, and no automatic receipt printing because Japan decided a piece of paper you immediately throw away was never something worth producing in the first place. Japan figured out that removing the wrong things improves daily life just as much as adding the right ones. Today, we're counting down 15 things Japan doesn't have that make life instantly better. Watch until the end because number 15, advertising wraps covering public buses, is one of those absences you never noticed until Japan showed you what a city looks like without them. Number 1, oversized food portions. A standard meal in Japan is sized for one person to eat and finish comfortably, not for one person and whoever is sitting next to them. Not for a theoretical appetite that doesn't exist, for the actual human being who ordered it. The result is a dining culture where finishing your meal is normal rather than an achievement, where you leave the restaurant having eaten rather than having surrendered, and where the relationship between ordering food and eating food is a direct one rather than a negotiation. Japanese portion culture reflects the broader principle that a meal should satisfy rather than overwhelm, and that quality is more relevant than volume when deciding whether a dish was worth ordering. The oversized portion exists everywhere else, not because people need that much food, but because size became a proxy for value, and nobody updated the equation. Japan never adopted the equation and the food is better for it. Number 2, drive-through windows. Japan doesn't need drive-through windows because it built something better on every corner instead. The 24-hour convenience store network provides everything a drive-through offers and more, in a cleaner space, with a wider selection, at the same or lower cost, accessible on foot without a car idling in a queue. And beyond the konbini, Japan's vending machine infrastructure dispenses hot meals, fresh food, and drinks at any hour from any location, putting good food within reach wherever you happen to be without a car, a queue, or a window involved at any point. The drive-thru exists in America as a solution to the problem of needing food quickly without getting out of your car. Japan solved the quick food problem by making high-quality food available everywhere all the time, which removed the urgency that makes sitting in a drive-thru lane feel like a reasonable use of several minutes of your life. Japan didn't reject the drive-thru. It built alternatives so comprehensively distributed that the drive-thru never had a problem left to solve. Number 3, chained bicycle parking. In most countries, leaving a bicycle anywhere requires locking it to something fixed with a chain heavy enough to deter the theft that is considered an inevitability rather than a possibility. Japan's low theft culture means most bicycles are left at designated parking areas, secured with a simple wheel lock at most, and the automated underground bicycle storage systems in urban areas store bikes in a mechanical rack accessible only by registered IC card. The bicycle is there when you return, not because the lock was difficult enough to defeat, but because taking a bicycle that isn't yours is a social failure serious enough that most people simply don't do it. The chain and padlock system exists everywhere else as a practical response to a theft problem Japan addressed at the cultural level rather than the hardware level, and the result is a cycling infrastructure that requires significantly less effort to use. If you're enjoying this so far, go ahead and tap like. It tells YouTube you want more of Japan's clever, everyday innovations. And if you love discovering things you didn't even know existed, hit subscribe so you don't miss the rest of this list. Trust me, the next ones are even smarter. Number 4, paper menus. Japan replaced the paper menu with plastic food displays outside the restaurant and tablet ordering systems at the table, solving every problem the paper menu created without replacing it with anything that requires laminating, wiping down, or reprinting when prices change. The plastic food display shows you exactly what you're ordering before you decide. The tablet lets you order, request refills, and pay without waiting for staff. Neither version needs to be touched by 50 people before reaching you, cleaned irregularly, or replaced when it becomes too sticky to handle comfortably. The paper menu persists everywhere else, not because it's the best solution, but because it was the first one and nobody replaced it with something better. Japan replaced it with 2 things that work better in every measurable respect, and the sticky laminated menu became a problem that simply stopped existing. Number 5, automatic receipt printing. Japan doesn't automatically print a receipt for every transaction. If you want one, you ask for one. If you don't, the transaction completes without producing a strip of thermal paper that contains your purchase information in a format that fades within months and goes directly into a bin within seconds. The IC card transaction log, the digital loyalty card record, and the phone payment confirmation all provide a permanent retrievable record of the purchase without requiring a physical printout to be generated, handled, and discarded at the point of sale. The automatic receipt exists everywhere else as a default behavior nobody questioned because the alternative infrastructure wasn't in place to replace it. Japan built the alternative infrastructure and made the printed receipt the exception rather than the rule. The bin next to every register that exists specifically for receipts people don't want is a piece of furniture Japan simply doesn't need. Number 6. Street litter. Japan has almost no public bins. The streets are clean anyway. The combination of these two facts is the one that visitors from other countries consistently find most surprising because the standard logic of litter prevention is that more bins produce less litter. Japan disproved that logic by removing the bins and addressing the behavior instead. The cultural expectation that you carry your own rubbish until you find a suitable disposal point is strong enough in Japan to maintain clean streets in dense urban environments without the infrastructure that everywhere else considers the baseline requirement for cleanliness. The litter on the pavement in most countries is not there because there are too few bins. It's there because the decision to leave it there is socially acceptable enough that enough people make it. Japan made it unacceptable, and the streets reflect that single cultural difference more clearly than any infrastructure decision could. Number 7. Ice in every drink. Japan serves drinks at the temperature they are supposed to be served at without automatically adding ice that dilutes the flavor, fills the glass with something that isn't the drink, and turns a cold beverage into a watered-down version of itself within 10 minutes of arrival. Cold drinks in Japan are cold. The glass is chilled. The drink is at the correct temperature. Ice is available if you want it, and absent if you don't, rather than being added automatically regardless of whether you asked for it. The automatic ice addition exists in America as a way of serving a cold drink without chilling the glass, keeping inventory costs down, and making a smaller volume of liquid fill a larger vessel. Japan chills the drink instead and serves the full amount you ordered in a glass that doesn't need ice to be cold. Number 8. Shopping trolley coin deposits. Japan's supermarket trolleys are available without a coin deposit because the social expectation of returning them when you're finished is sufficient to ensure they come back without a financial incentive attached to the process. The coin deposit system exists in Western supermarkets as a mechanism to prevent trolleys from being left in car parks, neighboring streets, and wherever else the path of least resistance leads them when there is no consequence for not returning them. Japan replaced the mechanism with an expectation, and the trolleys come back. The deposit system is not a bad solution to a real problem. It is a hardware fix for a behavior problem. Japan addressed the behavior and found that the hardware became unnecessary as a result. Walking into a Japanese supermarket and finding every trolley available and every trolley returned is a small and consistent daily experience of a society that solved a problem most countries are still managing with a coin. Number 9. Paid public restrooms. Japan's public toilets are free, clean, open to anyone, and maintained to a standard that makes them genuinely better than most private bathrooms in countries where public toilets are either paid or treated as a last resort. The paid public toilet exists in some Western countries as a revenue model built around a necessity. Japan decided that access to a toilet is not an appropriate thing to charge for, and built the facilities to a standard that reflects that decision. The practical daily benefit is that no journey in Japan requires planning around bathroom access. You don't avoid certain routes because public facilities don't exist or can't be used without payment. The toilet is there when you need it and it costs nothing. Japan treated public restroom access as infrastructure rather than a service, and produced facilities so good that visitors from countries with paid toilets describe them as one of the most immediately noticeable improvements to daily life in the country. Number 10. Coin-operated parking meters. Japan replaced the coin-operated parking meter with automated stacking garage systems that park your car mechanically, store it securely, and retrieve it on demand without a meter running, change required, or traffic wardens circling the block. The coin meter is a time-based revenue mechanism that requires correct change, constant attention to expiry, and a return trip calculated around a parking window rather than around when you actually need to leave. The automated garage charges by the duration of actual stay requires no change and is paid at a kiosk on departure rather than estimated in advance. The car is stored rather than parked, which means it cannot be ticketed, towed, or blocked in by another vehicle during the time it's in the system. Japan looked at the coin meter as a problem to be engineered around rather than a system to be operated within, and built the infrastructure that makes managing a parking window an experience that simply doesn't happen. Number 11. Overflowing public bins. Japan has very few public bins, and the ones that exist are almost never seen overflowing, not because they are emptied with extraordinary frequency, but because the volume of rubbish deposited into them is low enough that the capacity is rarely exceeded. The overflowing public bin is a specific urban failure mode caused by the combination of sufficient public litter with insufficient bin capacity or emptying frequency. Japan addressed the litter side of the equation rather than the bin side, and produced streets where the bin overflow problem doesn't occur because the input that causes it is significantly reduced. The visible consequence in any Japanese city is the absence of the overflowing bin and its associated overflow pile, the ripped bags, the loose items on the ground around the base, and the smell that follows. Japan removed a fixture of urban environments and other other countries, not by building more bins, but by producing less litter to put in them. Number 12. Single-use plastic straws. Japan moved away from single-use plastic straws significantly ahead of most Western markets, replacing them with paper straws, bamboo alternatives, and in many cases simply not providing straws at all, since most drinks in Japan are consumed directly from the cup or can without one. The plastic straw exists as a convenience for a drinking habit that Japan largely doesn't share. Drinks in Japan are typically served in cups designed to be drunk from directly, cans with pull tabs, or with paper straws where a straw is genuinely needed. The phase-out required no significant adjustment from Japanese consumers because the cultural habit of drinking through a plastic straw was never as embedded as it became in Western markets. Japan didn't give up something it relied on. It simply opted out of a habit that was never deeply rooted in the first place, and the pavement outside every restaurant is cleaner for it. Number 13. Security tags on clothing. Japan's retail clothing stores operate with minimal or no security tagging because the shoplifting rate is low enough that the cost and inconvenience of tagging every garment outweighs the loss prevention benefit the tags are designed to provide. The security tag is a standard fixture of Western retail precisely because the theft rate justifies it. In Japan, the cultural deterrent to theft is strong enough that the physical deterrent of a hard tag requiring a tool to remove is simply unnecessary for most retailers. The practical shopping experience difference is immediate. Garments hang without bulky plastic attachments. You try things on without working around a tag positioned on the most visible part of the collar. You leave without a staff member running a removal tool over your purchase before it goes in a bag. Japan's low-theft culture produced a retail environment where shopping feels like the retailer trusts you because the retailer's experience suggests that the trust is generally warranted. Number 14. Pavement chewing gum. The black spot pattern of flattened, dried chewing gum permanently embedded in pavement surfaces is one of the most consistent features of high-footfall streets in Western cities. Japan's pavements don't have it. The absence is a product of two things operating together. Japan's gum packaging includes small paper sheets specifically for wrapping discarded gum, building the disposal solution into the product rather than relying on bin proximity or personal discipline to manage it. And the social expectation of not leaving waste on public surfaces is strong enough that the alternative, pressing gum onto the pavement, is sufficiently unacceptable to prevent it becoming the norm. The gum-covered pavement is not an inevitable consequence of cities where people chew gum. It is the consequence of a disposal habit that Japan addressed at the product level and the cultural level simultaneously. Japan proved the gum-covered street was always a choice rather than an inevitability. Number 15. Advertising wraps on buses. Japan's public buses largely operate in their standard livery without full-body advertising wraps that turn a vehicle into a moving billboard, maintaining a visual cleanliness in the urban environment that wrapped buses in other cities quietly erode. Some Japanese buses do carry advertising, but the full wrap that covers every surface, including windows, is significantly less common, and certain operators maintain their vehicles in clean, unbranded livery as a standard, rather than as an exception. The full advertising wrap exists in Western cities as a transit authority revenue stream that was approved because the money was useful and nobody formally evaluated what the cumulative visual effect of a fleet of wrapped buses does to the aesthetic quality of a city street. Japan kept the bus looking like a bus. It sounds like a minor thing until you stand in a city where every bus that passes is selling you something and realize you stopped noticing when the public transport network became a commercial display. If you want to see more amazing things Japan is doing better than the rest of the world, then like and subscribe, and make sure to watch the video on your end screen. It's packed with even more things Japan doesn't have.